I love that image of Alex Magos just swinging around. Like, I mean, jumping to things and latching them. He may be the best in the world. There, I mean, maybe the best that has ever been.
Maybe in 2019 he was. I don't know, man. Things have gone a long way since 2019. I mean, Colin doing that cross move on the second boulder we did on the last Board Lords, that shit is probably, we thought was like an 8B single move. But the crazy thing about it is once you put them out in the world, I think 3 people have done that thing now, which is freaking wild from the bottom, not just the move, but from the bottom. So it's I want to talk more about this because there's a lot to dig into because I think one of the questions we got was, what does a V16 or 17 look like, or when are we going to get those? That's a huge can of worms, but I do want to talk about that. But anyway, yeah, it's wild. It's wild that shit. You just think that you're setting some of the hardest stuff, and then, in a couple of weeks, it just gets done several times.
Michael Rosato, welcome back to the pod, dude.
Thank you. Glad to be here, man.
Dude, I almost thought about just saying like Board Lord and then just having people not know who you were. Like, what if I was just like, welcome to the pod, Board Lord, and you?
Yeah.
Do we need another person in the board climbing space that no one really knows their real name?
No, dude. There's way too many people that are underground that no one knows their names. That's part of my whole deal for trying to get people to pay more attention to it. But
that's right. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. I think it's kind of funny how when Ravioli Biceps hit the scene and was this like underground, I mean, he was like kind of one of the people that put it on the map. And now we just have like, I hate to say this, dude, I did not mean to start out the pod saying something negative. Ravioli Biceps, unbelievably strong, but like, and that was kind of what put him on the map of like, look at this guy on the freaking moonboard. He's kind of just like a normal, he's still a board lord, but I kind of feel like there's kids that are just making everyone look bad these days.
Yeah, man, he was a forerunner. You gotta give a guy credit. Like, I think he did something, and I think this kind of, a lot of the board accounts, I think, they need to sort of give credit to him because he took a theme, right? He was like, well, I'm going to do all the benchmarks. And then all of a sudden he started becoming famous for that. And now, there's tons of that going on. When he was doing it, I don't think it wasn't hardly a thing, especially like in the social media realm. So, regardless, like, he's definitely, as far as the history goes on whatever this thing is going to become, he certainly has, he has his own portion of that, that belongs to him, and so credit to that guy.
I like that lore. It all started when Ravioli Biceps broke his ankle, and then he started filming every climb he did on the moonboard. Okay,
yeah, man, it's sick.
Okay, another tangent. Well, actually, no. Before we go on that tangent, Michael, you are director of marketing over at Tension. Mm-hmm. Last time you were on the pod, it was, I shall look this up. I'm going to say number 102 Tension Crew. Sounds right. That was a blast. And we talked about boards, and we're here to talk more about boards. I love boards.
Yeah, I sat in the background of that one a little bit because, Will's got a lot of things going on in his brain, and he's very articulate, right? So sometimes I don't think I slept worth a damn either before that pod. So I was like, you know what? It's probably best that I just keep my speaking to a minimum. But
there was 4 of us too. That was my first foray into a big group pod. And yeah, Will, I like call him the mad scientist. So you always want to hear. Although he got laser surgery and doesn't wear glasses anymore.
No, man, it's crazy. I'm still getting used to it. Now, but he's got blue light glasses now, so he's still got the theme going on. But yeah, he can see now.
Well, that's still very mad scientist of him to wear blue light glasses. So that was a good one. We had a blast. Lots of good board talk there. It's been a year. That means a whole nother year of me on the board, you on the board. People also probably know you as the host of, basically everything on the Tension YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
especially my personal favorite series, Board Lords. That's why I called you like you are the board lord because you organize the board lords. And dude, not gonna lie, I was creeping on your profile a few days ago and saw that you have climbed up to V13 on the TV2.
Mm-hmm.
Which one was
Yeah.
that, by the way? I gotta ask. Or multiple.
Uh, dude, you know what's crazy is I think I've probably only done one. Maybe I've done a lot of 12s, some that are closer to 13, but you know, it's just being 35. Boards are hard. But anyway, that one was so I set Diamond Eyes in the beginning,
Oh yeah.
and that's that's a well known classic. I had set it for 45, and it was just it really approximated what I think my thing is. Where the crux move on that thing, the way that I had wanted it to go was you kind of take these KFC holds or two in between two KFCs and you put like a far right foot and you articulate your toe down on one of the worst crimps, right? So it's this super hard tension move where then you go from there and you lock all the way off to this KFC that's sort of tilted in such a way where if you lose that foot, you kind of sling off the hold. So a lot of people can kind of jump snatch to it at 45. I knew that was going to be a thing, but I wanted Diamond Eyes for me was kind of approximating like that. That's the thing that I feel like I'm really good at is like a tensiony articulated foot in a fart lock off. So I then just started trying it steeper and steeper and steeper, and then I did it at 55. I haven't really tried it past 55, but
55 is steep, dude. 55 is
55 is
steep.
steep for that one too. It's pretty nailed.
Those KFCs are both like really good and really bad. Like I like that kind of pinchy, crimpy style. Like
Yeah,
when I get my thumb on there, and it's not like over the top, it's like behind
yeah,
it, and ooh, I can dig in. But then I don't know, they're a little fickle. And like when I think I've tried Diamond Eyes, and I thought that I like these holds, I can just do it. But I don't
hmm
know, there's some subtlety there.
yeah. And that KFC, that's hands down. That's like my favorite hold on the board. It and it's, Will's told the story at other multiple times, but that was like one of the first holds he ever shaped, like way back before tension even started, and then we kind of we redid it to bring it back to life and put it on the board, and it's got so much utility to it. You can crimp it, you can pinch it. It's like it's kind of in that nugget category, I like to call it, where you're
Hence
not like
KFC, I'm guessing.
it's not well, yeah, but yeah, exactly, and that's why it's called KFC because it kind of looks like a chicken nugget, but you're not really crimping it all the time. You're more like kind of you got your thumb on one side of it, you're like pulling out on it like you do a lot of those yellow holds on the moon board. It's kind of that nugget category that I think is really good for a lot of things.
All right,
So
I gotta
anyway,
go off on another tangent because
yep,
as you
please
were
do.
talking about doing diamond eyes and putting your foot on, way out there and like articulating the toe. So I remember last time I climbed with you, right around when we recorded that last podcast, you were wearing some super soft, I think Scarpas,
Mm-hmm.
and I was wearing, I probably was wearing something like the comp solutions, which have no midsole. They have a pretty stiff toe and like sharp kind of edge on the tip of the toe. And I've played around with like more rounded, really soft shoes on the board. And I actually think that I like really freaking soft shoes on the board. And you were the one I first saw doing that. And just like, what do you think about like different shoe types on, well, it could be any board and maybe even like the different angles? Like, do you always pick up your super soft pair?
Yeah, man, I'm pretty. I have always been a soft shoe guy. I mean, I'm a lightweight dude, so I can get away with it. Like I'm not. It doesn't hurt like hell when I'm wearing something that's feels like a sock. But I also because I've worn them for so long, like there's just this level of activation that you can do with your foot that you kind of can't get when you're in one of those like stiff shoes. I can't get that when I'm wearing like an Instinct VS or something like that. Like it just has too much rigidity to it, and like, the activation, the micro activation from directly from your big toe just isn't there. But I like it for boards because like especially when you get on really steep angles, like if you're not really jumping, like if you come off, if you're 60 degrees or something, you come off, you're going to hit the ground. So like the tension aspect, I like just being able to activate the toe and get behind something and really pull with it. So I don't know that that's necessarily an exclusive thing for boards. I like that outside too, but I just find that it is really nice to have that extra ability with your feet, on a board. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm a soft guy.
Yeah, I have never been, and then I was actually trying Harlequin emoji, as I've
Mm,
texted with you a lot
yeah.
about because it makes me angry that I can't do it, and it has like this little dimple foot, like a little. It's almost like a triangle with a bunch of dimples on it, basically a smear. And Harlequin emoji is like it's at 55, and you want to keep your foot for this kind of drive-by move right in the beginning. And I put on the super soft shoes, and they just stuck to it. I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense, kind of like a smear. And then on
Hmm.
some of the like tiny wood foot chips on the TB2, I was able to like kind of get behind them,
Yeah.
almost. And then you're like, okay, well, what's left? Like you got kind of these big slopey feet, sometimes like the top of underclings. Of course, you want that kind of. I mean, in general, if a shoe is softer, its rubber is stickier and will deform more onto sloper. Like it's kind of like a general rule of thumb, you know?
Yeah, and it's like less of a guessing game. That's my thing. Like when I wear a super stiff shoe, it takes me a bit to kind of get to a point where I like can trust things with it, and because there's just this, there's this level of not really knowing if you're on it or like if you're in control of it. But when you got a hypersensitive shoe like that, like you can tell you can really get that micro feedback between the hold and your toes, and I think that's really crucial sometimes, especially on boards and those tension boulders where you really can't cut feet. um, Not tension board boulders but tension boulders.
That's where
So
the name must have come from.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, didn't mean to go down the shoe rabbit hole, but it's
Nah,
something
man.
that I've been surprised about. Is just I've always been a stiff shoe guy because when I started climbing, stiff shoes were all there really was. And I do agree with you where you don't, in some ways, like there is a disconnect between like knowing if you're on that perfect spike or not. But also, once you can trust that and you get this kind of kinesthetic awareness that even though you're
Yeah.
stepping through the board, or like, sorry, when I say board, I meant like the shoe, like that stiff board feeling of a
Hmm.
stiff shoe. Like you can kind of just fucking mash on it. Anyways, boards have kind of showcased for me. It's let me explore super soft shoes, and now, not saying I'm a total convert, but I feel like I'm more confident in having it in my quiver, which is kind of fun.
Dude, yeah, they're great. And I will say this, like this is kind of low key. I don't know how low key this is, but we've been playing with the idea of like trying to partner with someone to let us make a shoe with them. Um, and I really think like that's probably the angle we might go. Like that sounds kind of gimmicky, like a board shoe. Like what the hell does a shoe that's just specific to a board do that wouldn't apply outside? But I'm all about it, and I'm still want to do it. So if anybody with connections is interested, hit us up because I want to make a board shoe.
Damn, heard it here first. I like
Yeah,
that. Maybe it'll have like LEDs on it or something. Like remember
yeah,
what were
it'll
those
light up.
shoes when we were kids where like when you walked around like the lights
Freaking
came on?
LA Gears, dude.
LA gear. Okay. Dude.
That shows our age.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um okay, uh back to some kind of intro about you hosting Board Lords. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I brought up the difficulty I've seen you do on the boards is it also just helps people understand that when those Board Lord episodes come out, or it helped me understand that, I should say. I see you and Quinn kind of playing around on those boulders, making sure these moves go. And I know this isn't like, I just know from how behind the scenes go, it's not like this is your perfect best attempt and you have this dialed and this is like the best you can do on each move. But it does just give you an idea as to how hard those Board Lord climbs are because you and Quinn quite good on the boards, pretty darn good. And so I just when I watch that now, I was like, damn, fucking Michael didn't do that move. Like, I wonder how hard that thing is.
Yeah. Yeah, man. They get really, really, really hard. And you know what? I think we could probably talk about this at some point, but I think that I think that when we end up making these things, like I'll have an idea for how hard I really think they are, and then when they eventually get done, they hardly ever get called what I actually think they are, and that's we'll save that for later because I think that's a whole can of worms.
Ooh,
Uh,
ooh, we
but
gotta get into that though.
but they're really hard, and we do take a lot of time to make them. I I have so many boulders still that are in my drafts that are specifically like templates for board lords. But it's not a quick process. I'll say that. And we can talk about that later, or we can talk about it now, whatever you want to do. But
I just want to know
um,
what percentage of those climbs are named after Tool songs.
yeah, that's my thing. Well, so all my boulders are all almost always named after a song or an album, and Tool was definitely, I'm a huge Tool fan, so I a lot of them are named after songs or albums, and big Deftones fan as well. Some are Smashing Pumpkins, some are, some other obscure thing. So yeah, I would say a lot of them.
Also showing your age there.
Yep,
That's
yep.
although I
I'm
feel
fine
like
with it. Whatever.
I think the '90s are coming back now, so it's cool.
Oh, dude, they've been back. It's crazy.
I just wanted you to know that my first concert ever was Tool. I went to a Tool concert.
Damn, dude. You
Mm.
know what? I am jealous of that because I actually, as big of a fan as I am, I really missed out on the early days of Tool. Now, like, Tool's not Tool anymore. They're just, they, that's what happens with artists. They get to a point where they're just not done in their glory days anymore. But
Mm.
I just can't justify paying out the ass to get, to see, current Tool and 2025 Tool. Like I would rather just sit on my couch and blast it on my speakers than pay all that. Like, but that's just me.
I believe that the lineup that I saw was Mudvayne, who went on to be more popular, but they were kind of like an
Yeah.
opener.
Uh huh.
Rammstein, who
Oh,
put on
geez.
an incredible show. I just got to tell you,
Hell yeah.
I remember actually, here's what I remember is the whole thing went dark, and then the guy just comes out and he's got like a laser on his face going back and forth. And he's just chanting Rammstein. And
Dude,
then somewhere
that
along
is
the way, he
sick.
yells fire, and like the lights come on, like he's like on fire. Anyways, then
That is sick.
Tool, then Slipknot. It was a
Jeez.
boy.
What was that? Was that like Warp Tour or something? What?
I don't remember. It was definitely,
That's a show.
there
That's
was a lot
awesome.
of angst in me. I was in high school. It was very perfect. It was
Yeah.
very appropriate for me in that
Throwing
time.
bows in the pit, dude.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I was still the same size I am now, and so there was no. I did not belong in the pit. I was up in the stands, just singing along.
Nice.
Okay, where was I going? We went to Tool. Oh yeah, back to Board Lords. Or just the reason why I brought that up also is I know that you spend a lot of time in the tension center in the tension HQ, and a lot of people go through there, man. Like a lot of badass climbers go through there, and I just am kind of wondering if you have any memories or wild things you've seen either on the TB2, on the Beast, the infamous Spraywall there. Although, did the Beast just get stripped, dude?
It did.
Oh, ow,
So
dude.
as you
Ow.
know, as some people, we had to do it. We had to do it, but there's a
Ugh.
lot of reasons behind it. A lot of them I can't go into just yet, but it's exciting for us. It's an exciting thing. So one of the reasons is because we now have a sister company, Bent, which Will and I co-founded, and I think that he's been cranking on the shapes, and we just have not been able to try them out. We don't like in theory they're great, but like we're like we can't even speak to these. We're not we can't climb on them. So we just had to take the space we had, man, and we had to just make the tough decision to strip the beast. But it will live again in one form or the other. So don't be too worried.
The
It'll come
Beast
back.
will be resurrected. 666, the return of the Beast. Okay.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, yeah. Okay. I mean, you can even talk about the Board Lord videos themselves, but just yeah, what moves or do you have anything stuck that sticks out in your head is like, what the fuck, man? Like, how
Yeah.
did your hands do that or your body go that far?
Dude, yeah. I mean, the one of the earliest memories I have was when we first moved into that spot and we were first putting, getting the beast to a good spot, getting all the holds in the right spot, and getting it settled into its place. It's at least its first iteration. It's gone through like four of them, which is kind of heresy in Spraywall land. But anyway, Magos came through, I've said this before. I don't know if it was on your last pod, but like one thing about watching the pro athletes, right? Like they're all pretty damn well rounded, but what's really cool is all of them kind of have their thing that they're some of the best in the world at. So like Magos, for example, when he came through, like what was obvious to me was he was just amazing at like coming from any direction at pretty much any hold type and just cutting, just taking wild swings off of them one handed, just absurd. Like because he would come from under. So the beast, for people who don't know, it was 55 degrees, it goes to 45 degrees, and it goes to 35 degrees. So one that sticks out in my mind was he was coming high speed from under. So he was going to a pinch on the 35-degree panel, but he was coming from the 45-degree portion. So going high speed to anything from out from under that thing is going to create a huge swing. So he's just going at like going at a pinch that is not very in cut. It might have been like a fat lip or something. Like it's a raw pinch. Dude just takes like a massive one arm swing off just the other direction and just holds on to that thing like it's nothing. And that one stuck out to me. And I watch it. Daniel's come, he spent a lot of time in there. Daniel is just one of the best in the world to just static lock offs, and like just no one is even, at least at that time was even close. So like seeing some of the things that we would set that we figured, anywhere from 8B to 8C, seeing him just come in there and just robotically just lock that shit off, like the best in the world at that. So I've seen a lot of really cool shit happen in there that I've just been very fortunate. But now that we've had board lords happening, like I see this all the time. Like even the next, like I don't want to reveal the next episode that we're going to drop. I like to kind of keep them a surprise who we have on there. But like, and I will say that in the next one, it's not some of the hardest things we've ever set, but there is some of that stuff going on where it's just what these athletes end up doing with these boulders are kind of, sometimes they're just out of the realm of anything you would ever expect. And which is also part of the difficulty of setting these things, right? Like that's why we take so much time to do it, because we're not trying to have them shit on them, but we're also not trying to have them like get shit on. So, but anyway, see it all the time. They all have their things, and it's really cool to be able to witness that and set things for them. Set challenges for them.
I am surprised by how often they break beta on your guys' boulders. And you guys are experienced setters. You're trying them. I would say that, especially you and Quinn have pretty different body types. So it's not
Yeah,
like you
Quinn's a
get,
monster.
yeah. And Quinn is absolute board lord himself. I don't
Oh yeah, dude.
like, yeah, very,
I'm
very, very
jealous because
strong.
he's a guy. He's 26. He can do it so much more than I can, and I'm just like, damn it. I wish I was still like made of rubber. Like I wish I could still snap back and do this shit every single day. But
I gotta hand it to him.
anyway,
Quinn is actually one of my favorite styles to watch.
yeah.
He's got absolute total just power, but then he also has a refinement to his movement, a control that
Mm-hmm.
off. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes having excessive amounts of power leads to making things look very controlled. Because he's just able to. Yeah,
And he's a big dude, man. Like
he is.
usually big dudes like that, like you're like, they're not going to be able to crimp through this, or they're going to have to just, go some other way around it. But no, dude, Quinn is like, he's really well rounded. So I would just say like as a 5'7" individual, like climbing with him all the time is fucking tough. Like trying to keep up with him is fucking tough because he can jump to a lot of things that I just can't even get close to. But then he can also just like crimp just as hard as me, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, but we're back to, you're saying, what were you saying? Something about
Oh,
the breaking
well,
boulders or
yeah, yeah.
something?
I'm surprised by how often the the athletes break your guys' I shouldn't say break them. It's not like it's
They,
ruined, but
yeah,
you
yeah. I
know,
think we gotta. They don't break them that often. I would say that they do a lot of more times. than I would like to admit. They do end up kind of figuring out their own way, which is not the same thing as breaking. Like
You're right. You're right.
I actually really enjoy boulders that have two ways about them that end up being about the same grade. But yeah, they do end up finding their own ways, which is really, that's also sort of a testament to like these athletes, right? Like they can just almost mold these things to what they want in a way. Like they can just figure out their own ways through them, and that's really tough for board climbs traditionally, I think. But they do it,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's impressive.
I think that's one of the things that I am jealous about you, Michael, is that when you get to see guys like Magos come through or Daniel Woods, I want to argue that even though they're the best in the world at some of these things, like I love when well, first of all, I love that image of Alex Magos just swinging around. Like, I mean, jumping to things and latching them. He may be the best in the world. There, I mean, maybe the best that has ever been.
Maybe in 2019 he was. I don't know, man. Things have gone a long way since 2019. I mean, Colin doing that cross move on the second boulder we did on the last board lords. That shit is probably, we thought was like an 8B single move, but what the crazy thing about it is once you put them out in the world, I think three people have done that thing now, which is freaking wild from the bottom, not just the move, but from the bottom. So it's I want to talk more about this because there's a lot to dig into because I think one of the questions we got when we can talk about that, but when we opened up, for those who don't know, we opened up some questions, and one of the things was, what does a V16 or 17 look like, or when are we going to get those? That's a huge can of worms, but I do want to talk about that. But anyway, yeah, it's wild. It's wild that shit. You just think that you're setting some of the hardest stuff, and then in a couple of weeks it just gets done several times.
Okay, 2019 Magos was ahead of his time. I still feel like 2025.
I mean, he's still
Magos,
one of the best.
Yeah,
not to. I love you, Alex. Don't be mad at me.
Please come and be on the board, lords. Yeah, I love seeing that stuff because even though Daniel Woods doing that unbelievably robotic lock off, I gotta say I love when Daniel just goes into that extra tension mode and nothing moves except for him sticking out his tongue, and then he just reaches and grabs the next thing, and you're just like, whoa, how did you freeze yourself there? But the reason why I bring it up is that I swear, man, when you, and I mean you, are around it, sometimes you go like, oh wait, maybe I can do that. And I'm not saying that all of a sudden you just can keep up with Daniel, but you're like, oh, I didn't even think to look at the move like that. And then you see it right in front of you. And I feel like it somehow, maybe it doesn't add that tool to your toolbox, but it gives you a vision of what is possible that somehow it helps you.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's tough too because a lot of these guys are just like so capable of owning a certain move, right? That it's, even watching them, it's tough to break down like, okay, like they moved their body a little to the left, they engaged in this certain way. Like it's tough to even just break down like why they did it. But yeah, just understanding that some of these moves are possible. Like
Yeah.
it's a really cool thing. It's a really cool thing to watch and be a part of. And again, that's why I like doing these videos and inviting people to do that, to come do these things, because we get to set those things for them. And that's just that's really cool. As like someone who's a fan of these climbers and who like watches them watch them do, some of the hardest things on the planet, like having them sort of in our arena, doing the things we set for them. That's a cool ass thing to me. So,
well, man, that's the magic of standardized boards, is that we get to watch it and then we get to try it, and you go, oh yeah, that is a 8B single move, and maybe a couple of people can do it, but you all can try it. And so let's use that as a jumping off point for how we got into this chat, or how this chat kind of came to be. Is you're the director of marketing for Tension Climbing, which does make a board, the TB2 and the TB1, but TB2 seems to be the more ubiquitous one these days, the current thing. And yeah, you were telling me that you were running into some issues in the community around the language usage, around just how we all perceive these latest crop of standardized boards. And so, yeah, tell me about the Instagram poll you ran and just why you ran it.
Yeah, yeah. So, as you said, I am in the unique position of marketing and selling these standardized boards. And it became very obvious to me not long ago. I guess shortly after we dropped the TB2 that, I started. I try to keep a pulse on everything that's being talked around about standardized boards. So, I'm poking around magazines, I'm poking around Reddit, I'm poking around Instagram, I'm poking around YouTube. Like I try to really stay in tune with what just the whole beat of it, if you will. And it was just I noticed that at, whether it was Reddit, whether it was magazines, whether it was trainers, whether it was climbers, people on YouTube, they're all calling these things different names. And I was just like some of them are not wrong. Some of them are just very general. And we'll get into, more of that, but there were some that were just wrong. And I'm just like, God, like as much as we care about these boards and as far as the board thing has grown since I began climbing on them way back when, we still don't even have a proper, specific title for what these things are called. At least no one, it didn't seem like anyone was really aligning on it. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to use my Instagram to kind of just get like a small sample of individuals to sort of get an idea of like what people actually think these things are called. So I just posted a picture of two tension boards from our shop, from the training center, and I just said, what are these? And I gave four options. And I got it pulled up right here. I can tell you what. So the first option was training boards. The second option was system boards. Then I had standardized boards, and then I had climbing boards. Now, to be fair, this is one of those questions you hate getting on a test because, frankly, two of the answers are not wrong. They're just not very specific. They're very general. One of the answers is spot on, and one of the answers is entirely wrong. Um, so it was interesting because, and it was just very eye opening. So 36% of people said training boards. And, I was watching this thing over the 24 hours I had it on, and it was going back and forth between training boards and system boards. Those were like going neck and neck. And so it ended up being training boards got 36%, system boards got 34%, standardized boards got 13%, and climbing boards got 17%. So, Josh, you said that you had said the wrong thing. I don't think you said the wrong thing. It wouldn't let me see what you guessed because you did take part in this little poll, but
I think I got it right. I mean, I think I
you
might
did
have
get it
gotten
right.
it right, but
Give yourself some credit. I think you got it right.
yeah, I mean, but dude, I feel like I I really should get this right because I am kind of I maybe don't have as much reason to have my finger on the pulse of board community other than that I spend most of my time on boards. So I feel like I should know this, but it was tricky for me. It was a very difficult multiple choice question as far as pick the most right one, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, and some test questions, man, those are the hard ones because they get thrown at you. They're the worst ones. But and to be fair, like no judgment to anyone who got this wrong. I don't think that I knew the exact answer of this up until pretty recently. It was just really when I started kind of as a marketer, kind of looking back and being like how does a customer even get information? Just from an SEO perspective, right? Like they're going to Google, right, and they know minimal about these boards. Like, how are they getting to the right information? And it just kind of dawned on me that it's tough when someone getting into the sport is hearing or they're hearing these things being called several different things, and you don't really know which path to go down to actually find the right answer. And for those of you wondering, standardized board is actually the correct answer. Um, Training board and climbing board are also technically correct. They're just very general. And the really the problem with that is because of the word board. Like climbers have just beat the shit out of the word board.
Mm.
And if you think about like hang boards, they've been around a lot longer than standardized boards. So from a perspective of like, hey, I'm new to this thing and I need to figure out more about it. Like if you go and type in climbing boards or training boards, you get a lot of information around hang boards. You'll get some of the right stuff mixed in, but it's just all over the place. And so, we decided like we need to try to submit the right, verbiage and the right terms so that people can kind of align on this. Because if we want this thing to grow and we want people to take it more seriously and we want people to find the right information, like we need to make sure that people know that these are called standardized boards. And that's because it's the standardized hold layouts, meaning it's the hold layouts that they're standardized. They don't change. You don't change them. The manufacturer creates them and then they stay the same from board to board to board. That's the foundational thing that makes them what they are. So, training boards, we've got a hang board is technically a training board, right? A spray wall is a training board. A tread wall is a training board. Like that's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of different things that fall under training board. So that's why I just wanted to, it's important to us as a company to like make sure that we get on the same page with everybody, but no judgment if you got it wrong.
Well, I mean, to kind of like play the other side, why I know why it's important to you guys, and I know why it's important to me now, but wasn't so important to me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is I feel like you kind of could just say boards because the amount of people on a spray wall, a spray board, a tread board, whatever standardized boards existed at the time, it just was such a small thing. There was no culture or community or anything to even talk about. Like, so
For
it
sure.
kind of maybe didn't even matter. And I also just got to point out that you're really showing your age again by saying Google is Chat GPT, man. Like you just go on
Oh
there
my
and you
God. Yeah.
say, what is the hardest, what is the best TB2 climb? Who is a board lord? And I swear to God,
Yeah.
like that's your new angle. Like, don't go to Reddit,
I
dude.
know.
There's nothing but mean stuff on Reddit anyways. People are gonna,
Dude,
yeah.
there's definitely mean stuff on Reddit, but you find out a lot about sort of the whole how things are framed in people's minds on Reddit. You get a lot of information, just as far as like the general education around things, and if people like I go to Reddit because I try to understand if people are actually getting it. Like, when we start marketing initiatives and we do different things where we're trying to market different angles around boards, for me, like I'm not very on the nose with that stuff. I like to sort of tuck it into other pieces of content so that the realization happens kind of after the fact. You have ingested this, content and or engaged with the content. So I try to like tuck a lot of things into a lot of places. So when I go on Reddit, I like to see like, are people actually getting it? So that I get a lot of information from that.
So
But
you're just using this podcast to incept people with like
oh, sure.
tension. You're just like
Yeah.
tension,
And
standardized.
we already, yeah, and we talked about this. Like, I'm not gonna, I very much want this to be like a discussion about general boards. Like, we'll definitely touch on the TB2. We already have, but like, even before the TB2 exists, like, I loved what board culture was becoming and has become. And it isn't just the TB2. Like so, we'll talk about the TB2, but I definitely I want to try to keep it as general as possible because I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys, and I also have done this on the podcast where, I mean, I like them. I like them all. Like I like all. It would be like saying I love going to Fontainebleau, which I just went, but I still love going to Bishop, man, or
Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
Tahoe or wherever. Like,
It's the
and
same thing.
you
It is
you
the
can only
same
work
thing.
for one company at a time, dude. So, it's
Well,
so
I'm glad I worked for this one, to be
yeah.
honest. But yeah, but yeah, as far as like the whole poll thing and getting it right, I think the thing that just to come back to it, like I think what's the most important part of it is like when people are getting into these systems, like we are just trying to make sure that like we're just in alignment with what these things are called so that people can kind of find the right information about the right things. And that's really kind of what that was about. I'm not going to be pissed at people call them boards. I call them boards. I generalize the shit out of it, but it's when you really get down to it, I think it's important to sort of solidify what exactly we're talking about here. So
Well,
uh,
the big evolution that's happened in the last 5-10 years are standardized boards. So
mm-hmm.
you kind of just did already define what they are and why exactly they're called standardized boards. It's a standardized layout, right? It's the attempt to make the boards as consistent as possible across the world, which
Yeah.
we could even get into that, how it doesn't always work out quite like that. Each board
Yeah.
has its own unique flavor.
That's what Will always says. That's the myth of standardized boards, and none of them are actually standardized.
But dude, this is okay. I hear this about grades too, where it's like, is that V17 or is it V16? And what if it's, soft? And this is just outdoors.
Yeah.
I'm actually
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
And my thing is like, this is the same as when you hit a home run in baseball. And my understanding, I could be wrong in this because I don't know anything about baseball, is that not all stadiums are exactly the same. So like the Mile High Stadium in Denver, I believe perhaps it has less air resistance and it's easier to hit home runs. I feel like I need to ask ChatGPT.
That would make sense.
That
would make sense.
But my point is that like I think this is the fun part, is that, oh, you did that climb on that board? Like everyone knows that board is old and polished, like good job. Or you sent that boulder in summer. What the hell, dude? How did you do that in the freaking sun? And so I think like rather than people looking for perfection in standardization, that it's just more like, I think that's like the fun twist. And then this is why I think competitions exist, is like, yeah, but what about today, right now, in front of us? And so that's when everything kind of is more standardized. Is like, okay, this is the day, this is the moment. So that's just my pushback on that. But okay, the reason why I brought it up is sorry, I got tangent.
No.
Talk about baseball.
This is all going to be tangent. Yeah, this is going to be a whole big tangent podcast. That's fine.
Despite the fact that we're talking about like the most narrow form of climbing ever, which is like right in front of you on plywood. Okay, standardized boards, relatively new to the world. Let's go into more what standardized boards are and why they maybe are separate from system boards, training walls, spray walls. Just like, what do they offer? Like, why are we all talking about why are we talking about standardized boards instead of something else?
Yeah. Well, let me say this, because a lot of people call standardized boards system boards, and I'm pretty sure there was once upon a time where I probably did one time or another. That's so again, no shade there. The system board is something entirely different than a standardized board. There is no standardized board that is a system board. The system board was created right around the time the campus board, Wolfgang was creating the campus board, and it was created by the Huber brothers. And what it was essentially similar concept as the campus board, but it had generalized feet as well as hands. And so it was this very short board that was made to, do 1 to 3 move sequences. It was made to do sequences on your right and left side. It was a mirrored board, but it wasn't made to do full boulders on or anything like that. So that's what a system board is. It was an actual training tool, just like a campus board was. It just was made for your lower body as well as your upper body. Now I can understand why people call them system boards, because at this point in time, most standardized boards have a mirrored layout, which is very similar to what, it was that came from the system board. But none of the standardized boards are system board. The closest one, in fact, was the TB1.
TB1, yeah.
And as much hate as that thing gets, it was, as far as all the standardized boards are concerned, it was probably the one that was most dedicated to specifically training. It basically was a system board, except it gave you the ability to do full boulder problems, and it just had a standardized layout that also connected to an app and a global database. So none of them are system boards, but the TB1 was the closest that you could get. So I just wanted to lay that out there, because I that's one that almost won the poll. Like, there was a lot of people that called them system boards. But they're, in fact, they're not system boards. They're standardized boards.
I mean, I can see why someone might call them a system.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
oh, this is like a system. It's, there is
yeah,
LEDs, there's a app. Like, I can see how someone might, say that, but I think it's that actual history that sets the tone for the etymology. Like the etymology of system for climbing is what you just said. So I think it's important to like say like I can see why people would say system boards, but it's specifically because of where that term came from that makes it
yeah.
not really the same thing anymore.
Yeah, and then again, like what makes a standardized board, what it is it's a hold layout, the same thing, and it's the app database, it's the connection to a worldwide community that really makes it what it is. And again, like there's a lot of training boards. Standardized board can certainly be used for training, and in fact, like the inception of standardized boards, I want to say, like Ben Moon started them. I'm pretty sure he just wanted to sort of in a some kind of way standardize what they had used at in the whole cellar culture and all of that in Sheffield. So yeah, I could definitely see why people just think about these things as a type of a training board. And for a lot of people, they're made to train on something that it's external to that board. My whole thing, the reason I'm on a crusade to like build, build the culture around these things is because, being so tied into tension and seeing this culture grow, it's becoming something entirely different. It just there are more and more people that are just they're not on these boards to get better at something else. They're on these boards because they want to be on these boards. It's either the fact that they don't have easy access to boulders outside, like for example, Sean Hutchins McCallum. He or is it McCallum? I'm sorry, Sean. I'm butchering your last name. Sean Hutchins McCallum. He's basically our ravioli biceps for the TB2. Like this kid is just incredible at the board. He has done every classic on the mirror layout, but he lives in Iowa. And he's not really close to any, I would say, really big name crags. Um, he's like the quintessential dude because he doesn't have access to outside bouldering. He's climbing on this thing because he's obsessed with that thing. He's projecting on that thing not to build strength to go do something else necessarily. He's projecting it as an end unto itself. So the reason I'm just kind of trying to solidify these things as their own thing, and I think it's important to look at them as their own thing, is because there's something happening here where some of the hardest things in the world are getting done on these systems, not outside. They're getting done on these systems, and just for the sake of doing them on these systems. And
You got to stop
it's
saying systems. It's standardized. Say it
standardized.
right.
Jesus Christ. So you got me. See, I told that's the reason I wondered. I was like, man, I know I've said system at some point or another, but you get what I'm saying. But they're
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
system board. But yeah, that's the thing. Is like they are becoming these climbing areas they're like these interconnected climbing areas. So when you're and I think this is important from my standpoint because I talk to a lot of people. There's a huge disconnect from the people that are climbing on these things often from the people who are actually making the purchases to put these in the facility. And I think that a lot of those people who are making those purchases are still stuck in the past where they're like, oh, this is one of those things we stick in the back where 5 or 10 percent of our clients or our members are just back there climbing on it. And that's kind of it. They just think they don't really put a lot of thought into it one way or the other. And I just think that that's a problem because they are more important than that, and they are becoming more important than that, and they are in effect like these interconnected climbing areas that people really care about enough to like create board accounts, to create videos, to listen to podcasts like this about the subject, right? Like all of these things didn't exist in the beginning, but they exist. And yeah, so that's kind of why I think you know differentiating what the standardized board has now become. It's not just this training board. It's entirely something new.
By the way, my board account at Testpiece Josh. Just throwing it out there.
Dude, you've
What's
been
your?
ripping around.
Dude, I'm not filming enough. I realized that.
I'm not either,
Dude,
honestly. I've been sleeping on it for a minute. I've just been injured.
like it's difficult to film. I posted one and I used the Kevin Gates song Two Phones as my background because I literally like had like an old phone. Like I have to have a phone that controls the board and one that videos me. I need to get a new setup. Because honestly, I often will do something and be like, damn, like I flashed that. Like I wish I would have recorded that.
Mm-hmm.
But instead I don't capture as much. Um, I love how you said these little bouldering areas or crags, or I can't remember the term you used, but it's almost like your own little mini Rocky Mountain National Park that
Yeah,
everyone
man.
can talk about. And so it's funny because the reason why it's interesting looking at standardized walls versus training walls is that we were joking how it's like, okay, so what is a training wall? Like, is the whole gym a training wall? It is if you're just training for, going bouldering outside. Or then it's like, oh, is that just training because you're doing big walls? Oh, is that just training because you're doing Mount Everest? And I just love this thing that's happened in climbing where these little splits come off. And
Yeah,
who would have predicted that boards would have become a whole subset? I mean, who would have predicted that bouldering would have become a whole subset?
exactly. Yeah.
For me, I thought my way into it was kind of interesting where I did a lot of training on spray walls with my crew, and it was to get better outdoors. And it was on this spray wall. We call it the plexi. And we never really, because it was a plexiglass. It was in San Francisco. It was kind of cool. Like
Oh,
the
that's
ball was
sick.
a plexi, very slippery, by the way. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
tough to smear on that.
yeah, maybe. And I know they just dropped boatloads of money on it. It was unbelievably heavy. Evidently, plexiglass, very, very heavy.
Yes.
Anyways, doing my outdoor training, COVID hits. I moved to the middle of nowhere, my farm, moved back to the farm, I should say, and end up building a moon board in my barn. TB2 did not exist at the time, so forgive me.
I,
Just
dude,
just
I was.
forgive me. Just
We've
forgive
said
me.
this before, dude. I started on a moon board. Still love the moon board. I
I
don't judge
still
you for that.
I have a moon board in my garage here, so I'm a bit of a polygamist when it comes to boards. So
Nice.
I'm sitting in the farm, yeah, away from all sorts of bouldering. It's in nowhere, California. I know California has boulders, but they're really far from where I was. But then I had this board in front of me, and literally I was like, dude, my goal is to do all the benchmarks because that's what was in front of me. And it was a very different thing because I'm like, I'm not traveling. I just had a daughter. I'm like, this is my life. Like this, or
Yeah.
sorry, this, I shouldn't say that.
This
Sorry,
is it.
sorry,
This is
daughter,
all I have.
family, career. This is all I care about. But that was all my climbing had focused around. There was no
Yeah.
training, and it was a very different thing for me. And then the whole community was like, I had a board account. I would like get all these texts. Oh, dude, you sent that, or I would tag someone like banger climb. It was just so fun, and so I carried that through. Like I still live that, although I do go outside now. But just it was very different from being on the spray wall with my buds, like making up one problem for that day or two problems. We never touched them again, really. And so all that is to say, like it is a community, dude. It's not it's a thing unto itself. I love that you guys at Tension understand that.
Yeah, man. And I kind of felt like somebody had to do it. Like I I want to be careful not to talk too much shit, but I just think that there've been a lot of people who have come out with these boards and they have not done, they kind of just came out with it. They didn't really tell you what it's supposed to do or what it's going to make you good at or what it's, any thought process behind it. And that always bothered me for one, but for two, like they're not doing enough to really foster what's going on as a product of those things. And that's what we're really trying to do. Um, I so and back to the spray wall thing, like we talked about this, like if you go back to Reddit again, right? If you go on it, well, not even Reddit. One of the first episodes I listened to that you guys were, you and Tim were talking about boards.
Oh no,
You were
us.
this you yeah, y'all were comparing the various boards. This was right after the TV2 came out, and y'all didn't have much. I don't think either of
I
you had
hadn't climbed
climbed
on
on
it yet.
one.
Yeah, I hadn't
I think
climbed on
maybe
it.
Tim had maybe once or twice when you guys were recording that. That's why we ended up doing that episode with you, because I was like, okay, we've got to get them on the board, because like they need to have a better, like a good real opinion of this thing. But anyway, on the episode, you guys like kind of talk back and forth about moonboard, kills board, and tension board, and all that. And then towards the end of it, Tim's like, you know what? If you really want, in my opinion, the best, and I don't remember exactly how he put it, but he was like, in my opinion, the best is a spray wall. Like, and he listed all the reasons why, which are valid reasons. He's like, you can make it what you want. You can, this, that, and the other. And I, on one hand, agree with him. Like the spray wall is where a lot of people get strong. If you talk to most pro climbers, they're just like, yeah, man, I spent a lot of time on a spray wall. And it's like, well, when we were making the TB2, I was trying to figure out exactly like what makes a spray wall so effective. And we do the spray wall episode, the spray wall series as well, right? That's a whole part of it too, because and for those of you who haven't seen it, maybe some of you have, we go to different spray walls all over the place. Some are in facilities, some are in like garages, but we've seen a lot of different spray walls. And while I do agree that a spray wall can be super effective, I also think there's a lot of things that people don't tell you about the spray wall, and why if money is not an object, why I will always go standardized boards now, especially over a spray wall. So just to back up, like spray walls are effective because they are cheaper to get into initially, right? Like you can gradually get your build, buy holds as much as you want and kind of gradually build the thing. It can be hugely effective for training. You can put a wide diversity of holds on there that, might represent different areas and different things. You can get a lot of texture diversity out of them, right? Like you can put wood holds on there. If you can get a hold of like old polyurethane polyester holds,
Yeah.
those things are like slick as hell. It's like a whole nother like layer of the like texture spectrum there. Or you can have like brand new holds that are super high friction, right? So that all that's representative of going to like a lot of different areas, right? Like
There's
because
no one
sandstones.
putting new holds on spray in all of the spray walls in the gyms I've been to or homes. It's just like, uh, these holds can no longer be used. They're chipped. Like, let's put them on the spray wall.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to get to that
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
that's a part of it. But a lot of them, that's cool because you do end up getting a huge. If you do them right, you get a huge variety of textures on there, which is really good for training for like slick places like Bishop or high friction areas like Horse Pens or the South or something like that. So you also get like a lot of footwork opportunities on spray walls. Like a really good spray wall, you look really closely and they've got like shitty little feet placed everywhere. And these are feet that are just way worse than anything you're going to come across in a commercial facility, usually, that's not on a slab wall. Uh, and then you can you can customize it. You can make it what you want. And here's the big but though. The thing about spray walls that I have come to learn, especially after visiting everyone that we have visited, is that they take a long time to get right. It is a long game. On top of that, like you have to know how to set really well, and that's also a part of the long game, right? Like I think the other aspect of that is that people are also very biased to their strengths. So though you can like customize what's going on a spray wall, you tend to lean towards the things you're good at, uh, just even if you don't mean to. So the finished product may be something that's really cool, but it might not really be good for you as far as a well-rounded situation. It might if you're really good about it, but I think it's really hard to make it something, built with a lot of your weaknesses, right? And then back to what you were saying, like all the spray walls that you go to, they're all like the shitty old holds. Some of those holds are the best spray wall holds you can get, but the fact that they don't make them anymore is also an issue. I have people all the time trying to hit us up to try to buy holds from us, from the Beast, because we have this unbelievable treasure trove of, some that old pusher shit, the old Stone Age, like Nycros, the stuff that you can't get anymore. Like, there's not a lot of companies that are making like updated like holds that are really good for the home market in the spray wall. They're just not. Like, holds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They're just not what they used to be. They're way more comfortized. They're just not. They're not what you're used to when coming across like a really good spray wall. So that's tough too, right? Like, that's part of the thing. It's like, if I want to do a spray wall, I've got to find all the right holds. It's probably not going to be the ones that are on like some of the best spray walls. And anyway, I'm rattling, I'm going off, but the last thing I'll say about the spray wall that is the real big kicker to me is that, like you mentioned before, it's isolated. Like, if you're the type of person that doesn't mind that and can just go and climb on something by yourself and just be happy with that, maybe you're a spray wall person. Like, that's totally fine. Like, I think there are people that enjoy that and that's what they want. But for me, I'm a very social climber. I like that goes hand in hand with what I like to do. And like, I like people involved, and you don't get any of that with a spray wall. You're totally shut out and you're isolated. So again, not a bad thing if that's your thing, but that's what you get with a standardized board. And like I said, I used to think that the spray wall was like the one. If you were going to make something that's optimal for training or optimal for getting better or whatever, like, the spray wall is where to go. But now there are standardized boards that have all the variables of spray walls built into them, yet they also connect you, and they also connect you to a global database. So that's why I'm like, I would go with standardized board any day over a spray wall, personally.
All right. I'm here to play devil's advocate to support Tim after we threw him under the bus on the episode. I'll link to that episode. Also,
love you, Tim.
We should also link to the episode where the YouTube on tension, where me and Tim visited your guys' facility. You guys gave us a whole. That was a fun one.
That was a fun one. Yeah,
fun day. Okay, I will point out that I chose the moon board specifically during COVID when I was in the barn because my buddies had it and I'm already isolated. And so that isolation piece, like, it's something that, there's, like you said, there's going to be some people that the community doesn't matter. And they're probably the same ones who will call the standardized boards training boards because they're just obsessed with training. So it was fun. I literally would do like FaceTimes. We would session together, which was kind of cool. So they'd be in LA. I was up in Northern California, and we'd be like on FaceTime sessioning together. Kind of cool. Really special, especially during that time. Okay. Here's going to be my, I don't know if it's my pushback. I'm just, picking at a little bit.
Go for it.
I was talking to Ned Feely, and he said something interesting about his spray wall in his garage. And he basically said that he just chose holds that he hated. And so it was like going to be good training for him. Because I think what you're saying is understated, where people don't know how hard it is to pick holds that are good for them. Pick holds in general, people with spray walls, with good spray walls, and there's not that many in the US, I'll say, they basically acquire those holds throughout their whole life.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for it's even with what Ned's saying, it's like he has nothing but holds he hates on there. Well, this is Ned Feely, who can make his own holds and has I mean, dude, he's a beast maker founder. And so I thought that was something interesting, where it was just like, okay, you want the best training effect, just hate every hold in your board. But my pushback against playing devil's advocate to my devil's advocate is that something that I often say when it comes to training is that let's just say that Ned's way is better training, quote unquote, right? But what I say is that you got to fall in love with what you're doing. It's better to fall in love with some kind of quote unquote training that isn't quite as effective, but you do, and you do it with passion, versus like something that's theoretically the best, because you're not going to do it. Like if I have
Yeah.
to, if I really do hate all those holds, I don't know. Like, am I really gonna like get out there and try hard and do it? Like, some certain people are like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fall in love with what you hate is a very big part of the sport, right? Like we
That's
all we
terrible,
all
dude.
like it is like you've just got to do it. Like there's a point at which everybody's like, "Oh, I'm plateauing, like I don't know what to do." Like you got to kind of fall in love with what you hate. You got to like mix it up and do the shit that you've been avoiding. Like that's a part of it. And I'm not saying that people
Well,
won't do that. Like
hold
I
on, Michael. I feel like that is potentially the right answer for how do you go from good to great. But I would argue that for most people, just showing up and like doing something that they love, like with try hard, like whether it's just going to the gym with your buddies and climbing nothing but commercial sets that suit you, I still think you're better off than like going out there and having fun with your buddies on just kind of juggy climbs or whatever that aren't good for you, to be well rounded, versus like I hate the fingerboard but I need to just do it. I feel like you're right, but maybe that applies to kind of like level two or
yeah,
something. I don't know.
sure,
I'm just
sure, sure, sure.
nitpicking. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. But that's the thing too. It's just like an up vote for standardized board, in my opinion. Like if you get one, and again, not naming any of them, but if you get one that happens to have a wide diversity of holds, where it's not just crimps, it's got slopers, it's got all of these things. That is usually a quality of a well set spray wall, in my opinion. Like that's what I love about spray walls. Like you can kind of get a sloper compression boulder right next to a tic tac, very hard tensiony crimpy boulder. Like that's what's really cool about that. But standardized boards are really cool because you're not the only one setting either, right? Like you can climb a shit ton of the things that you like, but you also have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to work my weaknesses and do things that I just have no control of. And I didn't set this. I didn't, and you can hone in on certain holds that you're awful at and say, oh, I'm just going to like pick some boulders from this dude in the UK and do all of his because he seems to really gravitate to the stuff that I'm bad at. So again, you're not the only one setting with standardized boards. Like you kind of can take your bias of the certain hold and all of that out of it. And yeah, I think that's also a part of getting better is like throwing in that variety.
I catch a lot of flack for this from my buddies, but I basically am. I only climb on classics and on the tension or benchmarks in the moonboard world, and I do it because I want to be forced into boulders that I typically wouldn't set for myself. Like if I'm just swiping through, it's so
Yeah,
tempting to be like, oh, I know that hold. Like I love that hold. I'm just going
yeah,
to do it. And so I like kind of being forced into boulders that I would never have set for myself. I will give just like a little tip for someone if they're on spray walls and they have to set for themselves. This could be done actually on standardized boards as well.
yeah, yeah.
So usually on spray walls, you have acquired things or you're on the board that has acquired holds throughout a decade. And so there'll be kind of these sets. They'll be like, hey, here's like 7 Technic crimps or something, that are, that are chipped and old and worn out. And the way they get put on the board is often haphazardly. We'll just, a spray wall, they'll be haphazard. And so I think it's good to just pick a color or pick a hold type, pick a hold set, like only Technic crimps, and especially if it's one maybe you don't like. And then the little kind of caveat there is like when you're gonna set, like then add in one fat pusher sloper, right? Like like do something just to give it a little flavor, because like the best boulders outside will be like some crimp rig with then like a delicate sloper in the middle or
Oh
something.
yeah,
and,
yeah.
and
Usually
so
have like a variety and like diversity to what's going on. It's not just all one thing.
and you can do that on standardized boards too, but I think it's just like a good, like I think people get paralyzed when they try to set, whether it's for themselves or for others, where it's like there's an infinite amount of setting to do. And so I like being like, I'm going to just do wood crimps, right? Like on the TB2, like that. That's going to be my theme for this boulder.
For sure. Yeah, we get a lot of questions about like how we set certain things, and I've got a lot of methods that I really enjoy. One of my favorites is kind of what you were talking about, and I've I've said this before in videos, I know, probably podcasts, I don't know, but like, one of my favorite things to do is to just ask someone else, even if that person isn't that good of a climber. Like, let's say you're a person on Spraywall, you own a Spraywall, and your wife is not really much of a climber or something. Like, you can even like do this with them, but you just let them. You say pick the holds. Like, pick 3 to 4 holds, and then I will make the boulder through it. And I've done that numerous times, both on the Beast and on the TB2. Like, some of my favorite TB2 boulders were boulders that I had actually did not pick most of the holds for. And that's a really fun way, right? Like, you get to remove your bias and your, like, your need to gravitate towards the things you really like. And that gets removed. You do still get to, get creative with the movement in between those holds, but that, in a sort of a way, kind of teaches you to kind of set outside of your box and what you would normally gravitate to.
God, we're not even getting into the idea of trying to put holds onto a board and why that's so difficult. And in the video that we did, I think we showed Will's like layout of, like a quarter scale or whatever. I don't know what the scale was, but just like a replica to try to attempt it. So I don't want to get into that. It's just insane.
Well, let me give one tidbit as far as that's concerned. Because some of the best spray walls have slopers, they have all different. Again, they have a wide diversity of holds. Most slopers that are really effective at slopers, they have a huge depth to them. So that's one thing I want people to like think about, is like, that's what's also tricky about setting on, because when you have something that's a high depth that comes off of the wall, you have to put that in a specific place where you're not blocking crucial crimps that are, past it, for example, from the bottom to the top.
Yeah.
So that's also like, so just be aware that like depths are also part of the difficulty and part of sort of the long game as far as tweaking and all of that. So again, that's another reason why they're a little tricky.
Okay, I'll say one more thing about just if someone were to tackle this. I am not a spray wall setting expert, but I've been around it quite a bit and I've helped. But help is the key word here. You gotta like you want to know how to set a good spray wall? Do it 10 times, right? Like that's really how you do it. And just this idea, the kind of general idea, just to put it out there in case someone's tackling it, is that you often put little boxes or squares around, break your whole board up into squares, and then recognize that each of those squares should maybe represent, or within each of those squares, you should have a myriad of hold types, a crimp, a slope, or a pinch, an undercling, Gaston or side pull, right? Depending which. And so just like, that's a way, although then when I said that to Will, he was like, I don't think in squares anymore. I think in arcs. And I was like, all right, Will, get your blue light glasses on, go back into the shop. Yeah.
He's definitely got a point and a method there,
for sure.
He is a nut. He's a mad scientist.
Okay. While we're on the idea of setting boulders and making them good for you or not good for you, whichever way you want to look at that, there are these things called classics on the TB2. Actually, what I'll say is you hinted at this earlier before doing this podcast. You went on the Tension Instagram and said, hey, what are some questions you guys might have for me and Josh when I go on the pod? And so this was one of them. This was also one of mine, is there's these things called classics. And maybe you could define kind of why classics are different than, both why they're different in the sense that they have kind of like points, that there's like a leaderboard, but then also what goes into like, why is something a classic? Like, what's the ethos there? What's the idea behind what gets me a classic versus what does not? Quick break to tell you about today's sponsor. And just a reminder, I only partner with companies that are run by climbers. Today's partner is Organic Climbing. Organic has been making the best crash pads in climbing for decades. And I know this because some of my pads from them are over 10 years old and still going strong. Organic's pads are sustainable because they are built to last, and you can buy replacements for the buckles, straps, even the foam. so you can help the environment and save money by not always being forced to buy the latest thing. Organic is family owned and operated by Josh Helke, who is an absolute OG in the climbing scene. On top of that, Organic makes everything in the US. This is why the quality is top notch. And because it's all made in house, you can customize what your pad looks like in almost any way imaginable. Oh, and by the way, my favorite thing about organic pads is how comfortable they are to carry. They've always paid attention to this part of pad design, and I think it's underrated how important that is. Go check them out now at organicclimbing.com. Okay, back to the pod.
Okay, so I would think the classic idea was separate from the leaderboard. I think the leaderboard came after we decided to do a classicing system. Yeah, that's right, because we had classics on the TV1, so that was way before the leaderboard got developed. But yeah, essentially, like we recognize that when, let's say, you climb on a moon board, like you gravitate to the designated benchmarks, right? And the thing is, though, is like we wanted to do something where we were identifying sort of the best quality climbs rather than. So I think the benchmark system is more so about like this is a good representation of a specific grade, like a solid representation of a specific grade. And sometimes, you know, hot take, sometimes regardless of quality, benchmarks are not always the best, like, but they are, supposed to be a good representation of that grade on that board. So yeah, classics are more so a quality indicator from our perspective. And I say from our perspective because, end of the day, that is, again, that's sort of a subjective thing. However, most of us who are the ones designating these classics have a setting background. So we know just from at least the commercial standpoint, like what makes a good boulder and what makes a quality like experience. So that's what classics are. And then when the leaderboard came along, where people could kind of gamify what they're doing on the tension board, the classics were the boulders that they're the only ones that count towards that leaderboard. So that put a lot more emphasis on like really doing those, especially to people who really wanted to make a game out of it and climb the leaderboard.
I'm such a sucker for that, dude. I just, dude,
Yeah,
just number goes
gamification
up.
is
Yeah.
it's definitely addictive, man. I got into it right in the beginning because when they turned it on, I was like 200 and some. I was like, what the shit? Like this is an awful look. And so I sieged it for a long time. I got number one on the spray layout and like number three. I think maybe 3 or 4 was like the highest I got on the. But this was way in the beginning. Now there's so many people playing that game. I could never get there. But anyway, that's really it. That's what classics are, and that's kind of how they differentiate. That's the difference between classics and benchmarks. Um, and again, like a lot of as far as setting and designating them, like what we try to do them to get like we try to not do them alone. We try to do for the most part we try to have like several people who are on our whether they're pro climbers or that come through and want to play on that thing and or sorry they want to designate classics with us, or it's just our internal team kind of looking at and trying different ones and designating the classics. We try to do them together so that it's not just one person and one opinion. um, but yeah, man, when we're doing it, we just do our best to kind of look for the same things that you would look for in a quality commercial set, right? Like, does it flow well? Like, is it like as far as flow, like are the whole difficulties like kind of similar? Is it not things where it's just like easy hold, like super hard hold, like shit like that? Like, does it flow well? Is it equitable? That's a big one. Like, and that's not to say that like some classics don't have big moves and jumps in them. Like they certainly do. As Will puts it, like there are some classics that are simply asking a question, but they're really good in the way that they ask that question or like ask a specific or demand a specific thing from you. And we always talk about Matt's oh gosh, what is it? Simplify.
Oh yeah.
That's a classic V10 on the mirror. And it really is just kind of, it just asks the question of like, can you dead point this crimp? Can you hand foot match? And can you pull, like, can you basically one arm this crimp to the next one? And that it's in like, it's so simplify, but, but it really does a good job at asking that specific thing. Right. And so we look for those things as well. Um, qualities. I had something, I got a list right here. What I mean by that is like endings like that. Usually you can see these in the beginning, more so in the beginning of a boulder and the end of a boulder, right? Like, is there a foot that just allows you to match this thing nicely? Like, are there these little quality points that really don't mess the grade up, but just add to the flow and the experience? Like, if they have that, that's also sort of an indicator of what we look for. Themes are nice, like if it's a compression boulder, if it like really nails that theme. Um, Complex movement is really good. All of us who have board climbed forever we recognize that like the jump, dead point, jump, like that is the biggest theme in board climbing. And some of the things that I look for are just complex movements that kind of don't just resort to a jump move, because it's harder to do that. It's just there's so much of that in board climbing that like I look for more complexity within like foot placement and can you use a hold in different orientation? Is there like recycled movement? Stuff like that. So it's a lot that goes into it. At the end of the day, it is subjective to our team. And another thing I want to say is like we have so many people that are just like, we need more classics. We need more classics. And man, we try so hard to do this when we can, but people have to keep in mind that we are a very small team. We do not get paid to designate classics, and we do it when we can do it. And we try to do it consistently and, equally across all of the crops, all of the angles, all of the grades. It's a lot. It is a massive undertaking to do it in a systematic way and to do it consistently, but we are trying. That's why we created that ass or gas episode, because we wanted, or that series rather, we want people to be able to like submit their boulders. And we also want an opportunity to kind of explain how we think about setting these boulders and what really, in our eyes looks like a classic, as opposed to something that's not very good, which is on the ass side of the ass or gas. So anyway, it's a big thing, but
it's unfortunate that classic actually has ass in it, the word. I just realized that.
Yeah. Well, we say ass, gas, or class. So that's kind of what we should have named it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm glad that you didn't just say classics have quality or high quality. That's what I was going to be like, what do you mean? Like, what is the subjective thing?
It's a lot.
I do want to point out that you guys do have classic board jumping latch. Like it's not, it's funny because when I think of quality, I do think of that flow, that consistency, but then there's plenty of climbs in the world that are unbelievably famous because of one hard, unique move. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's, maybe like El Corazon, where like, it's like an iron cross, right? And I'm not saying the top isn't hard, but I just mean,
defying gravity.
Ooh,
there it is.
I heard that one.
Big jump move.
Yeah. I wish I can't do Zach Galla's Wright brothers problem, which would be like my equivalent of that. I'm so close, dude. Cause I'm good at those things and I'm like, oh, I can do this. And then it's very, very big. All right. Off to, and you guys don't complain too much about how many classics there are, because I spend a lot of time on the board. I've done a lot of classics. I still have a lot more classics. Like there, you can, Sean, maybe he can complain because I'm pretty sure he's done them all.
He's done all of them.
Just give these guys a break.
There's just also so many good boulders that aren't classic that we just haven't gotten to or been able to it's just like, I understand that it's, tied up in the leaderboard and that's fun and all, but like there's a lot of stuff that's really good that's not designated classic and you just wouldn't know about it because you just, people aren't looking, but it's there.
So I'm just going to assume that a lot of the people saying that too haven't done them all, because there's literally only a few guys there's like one or two guys who have really done them. And so what I would say is that if you're like, oh, but Michael, I've done all of them V6 and under, and I can't do V7s, or I've done all the V7s I can do, is I would say, go take a V7 or a V8 or a V9 or a V10 that you can't do, put it at
Yeah.
20, put it at
Yeah.
25. Go see if
Yeah.
you can do it then.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that when we designate a classic, and people may not realize this, that it doesn't classic that boulder for every angle. It locks it into that specific angle. And that's, that's the thing we get all the time. It's like, we don't have any classics at 55 on the mirror. It's like, yeah, okay, all right. Like we'll try to get to them. Like I understand, but like, give us a little credit, like give us a little grace here. Like I would take a gamble and say that we are doing far more than anybody else when it comes to trying to curate and make a good experience via the classics. And I know there's a lot of different crops where they don't have all the classics and all that. So like I understand that, I totally get it, but we're really doing the best we can. Like believe it or not, like I have a lot of responsibility outside of the YouTube on my day to day. Like it's not just us sitting around designating classics.
Michael,
So
I do want
do
more classics at 55. I like 55. I miss the super steep stuff. I'm
I
always
know.
like the kind I've spent enough time on a 40-degree board, and I always go and people are climbing on at 40. I'm like, you guys, 55. It's so fun. It's a
It's so
completely
good.
different board.
Yeah.
I would argue that the TB2 and I would say, I actually would say this about the Kilter too, the moon board, or I've never been on adjustable one, and I haven't been on. I would argue that they actually start shining at 55, where you said, or 60, and you said that thing where if your feet pop, you're cooked. Like you can't
Yeah.
be swinging around, and that to me is actually, I guess maybe because I've spent a lot of time on moon boards where it really is jump and latch, and that is a skill, and it is good, and it makes you better at jumping and latching. But boy, is it fun when your foot cannot pop. And yeah, anything to say about kind of uh, the different degrees, and also just because to tie this into something you said, where hey, these classics are done at a certain angle, but that doesn't mean you can't climb them at other angles. And what have you learned from climbing the same problem at different angles? And maybe that's like a portal into what really steep climbing is like.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say about boards and different angles and stuff like that, again, I'm not trying to shit on anybody, but the angle adjustment is, I think, primarily sort of a dial for difficulty, right? And that's kind of how it's traditionally been looked at. Like the steeper you go, the harder it is, blah, blah, blah. That's not necessarily true on the TB2, I would say. And the reason being is because we put such a diversity of holds that are what I like to call it is a hold difficulty spectrum. Like we have a not only a wide diversity of holds, but the difficulty of those holds. And when I say difficulty, I'm judging them based on a flat 0-degree plane. We have easy all the way to hard, and we've got easy, intermediate, advanced, and hard holds on there. So we have 4 legitimate categories of hold difficulties on that board. Okay. And so what happens when you mix diversity and a spectrum of difficulty is adjustability doesn't just make something harder. It actually can give you a sense of variety. Like it gives you a whole different experience. It's not just that things get harder. You can put something down at 60 and you're like using holds in all these different ways that you never thought you would. And now all of a sudden you're doing like technical ass like roof climbs, like, and you're using what are usually just handholds as like these incredibly intricate feet, and you're just doing things you would never have thought about. So I would say, like, if you're stuck on, I think most people climb on the TB2 at 40. The standard we say for the TB2 is 45, but the board really does shine past like 55 and below because of that spectrum of difficulty and that diversity. So anyway, you're missing out is what I'm saying. And I think that's why on the kilter board it probably shines too, because the kilter board has, I would say that the whole difficulty probably top Jesus Christ, taps out at the top end of intermediate. So depending on your level, like I think it probably shines at steeper angles because you're, at 40 and 45, you're probably doing these massive spans because the holds are just not difficult enough to do anything but that.
Mm-hmm.
But at 55, you can really, I think it'll really give you sort of a tension aspect to it. And so anyway, all that is to say is like that really is kind of what that on the TB2, I think is a big differentiator. It's not just difficulty. You just have a whole different board at those angles. And really that is to do with that diversity and that difficulty spectrum.
Yeah, I love how many bicycles are required when I'm climbing on the super steep wall right there. And
Yeah.
then it's always appreciated when it gets really steep. You have to walk your feet over, and there's like lots of feet to, walk your feet over, because if they pop, you're out of there. And just,
Yeah. And this also kind of talks about, I think we had a question about the outside, like which one's best for the outside. And I'll just like say this now, like that to me, like I know, there are the defying gravities in the world where, the foot cut is required and all of that. But like the thing for me is like the harder things, it's seemingly outside, like the harder things are usually more of a, can you keep your feet on rather than can you cut your feet? That's just, and that's kind of a thing that that's the only problem I've ever had with like standardized boards in the past, is that like that was kind of, there was a big disconnect, like with what I was doing on a standardized board. And then I would go outside and I'm like, oh shit, like I can't cut feet at all. Like, so to answer that question just in a nutshell, like the best board for outside is the one that can really, in my opinion, can teach you how to keep tension on anything, and on really bad feet, on really bad textures. The ones that are really pushing the foot skill game, to me, are the ones that shine as far as like that transition from those boards to outside. So not naming any names, but there's certain ones that are better at that than others.
well, I mean, to push back on that though, you could look back in history and people are climbing outside a bunch. They had amazing footwork. They kept their feet on. What they needed to do was learn how to jump and latch, because that
Yeah.
does occur, and it does build a brute power. And one thing that I think people don't understand on some of the harder things outdoors where you have to jump and latch is that often the way you jump and latch is it's like, I'm going to keep my foot on, my foot comes off at the very last moment.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's different than I'm going to generate and
Yes.
fly and catch. I hopefully, I mean, I know, I'm talking a little difference there,
It is a difference for sure. The holds are usually just far worse outside. And I also like about the angle thing. Like I just don't, pound for pound, and I think it just depends on what you're climbing on, where you live, and all of that stuff. But like, I am never really climbing on as steep of an angle outside as I do on the board.
I wish I
Like,
was.
yeah, like I would say some of the hardest shit is like at 35 degrees. And it's just that the holds are so bad and the feet are so bad that, you know, it's just different in that way.
All right. Yeah,
But
dude, one of the best things that someone told me, and I've pushed people a lot on this, is just try to keep your feet on when you're climbing. Like really
yeah,
try. And let's say you do some move that's pretty extended, and then, I'm just going to throw grades at it. It's like, V8, you get really extended and your feet cut and you're kind of on something steep and you're burly and you just hold that swing. I'm like, okay, cool. Um, at some point, that grade is going to, or the harder boulders are going to have a hold, and you're not going to be able to cut your feet. It's going to be the same
exactly.
move. You're going to reach way across your body and steep, get that little undercling, but your foot cannot cut, because at some point, V16 is not about cutting your feet on smaller and smaller holds. It's a similar movement and keeping your foot on, walking it through, having that tension. So, okay, this totally begs the question around grading and difficulty. And that was another question that you saw pop up a lot. And it's, why is there no 16s or 17s on the board?
That's a good segue, right? I think one of the questions was, what does a V16 V17 look like on a board? And simply put, I think, well, for one, I think they do exist. I will say that. For two, I think what they look like is a lot like Burden of Dreams. You can't. I mean, if you just really want to like think about it, like Burden of Dreams is a board climb, man. That thing is just a straight angle. It's got awful holds. It's got awful feet. You can't cut feet on them, except for the last move. Um, and so what's crazy is I could go and probably take 15, 20 minutes and I could set that on a board, especially on the TB2. The thing about it is, in my opinion, is like that question opens up a few different subtopics. I think that goes into how people use boards. I think that goes into sandbagging on boards and that whole deal. I think that also goes into accessibility as part of the grading equation, right? Like you don't have flocks of people going to Finland and trying Burden of Dreams. You don't have flocks of people trying Megatron up there all the time. So I would say like part of this is like let me just back up. Like I would take a gamble and say that if you watch Board Lords 4, the one where I had the Wheeler brothers and Adam Shahar on it, the first boulder we gave them, it was called Sail. That thing has still not been done, and I would be willing to bet that is we set it at 45 degrees, and it kind of revolved around the two. Well, it's the same hold, but it's the worst in cut plastic hold on the board, and it's a big move to the same one. Okay, they all mention that move is harder than the Burden of not the Burden of Dreams, the Defying Gravity move, right? And that's a hard move. And Defying Gravity, as far as I can tell, is still solid 15. Now, there's hard climbing after that. People have fallen after that move. I don't want to say that it's just kind of approximated by that move, but that's kind of the big thing around it. And there's also hard climbing after you do that move on Sail. So let's just say that's, at 45 degrees, that's V15. Because those guys were saying it was harder. It felt harder to them than that move. And Shahar did Defying Gravity in one session. Noah did it fairly quickly. So they would know. So I would just be willing to bet, like, what does that feel like on 50 or 55 degrees? If it's possible, then wouldn't that mean it's right in the realm of 17 and it's sitting there? So I think my point in saying all of that is like they're on the board. Like that's what's cool about adjustability with some of these climbs. Like even the first Board Lords, the second boulder I set, Deus Ex Machina, it's gotten one ascent. Last I checked, Josh Bresler, Young Crusher. I want to have him on the Board Lords too. Josh, this is your invite. I'll hit you up. But he did Deus at 45, which is what I set it for. And and I said it in that video, I thought that was V15. And when he did it, he, as far as I could tell in the copy he worked the hell out of that thing. He did it at 40 and then he worked the hell out of it to do it at 45, which was the angle I set it on. And he gave it 14. So all of this is to say is that, they already exist, but there is two things that's going on here. One, it's like, do people understand that grade enough or have exposure to what V17, V16 is to accurately call it what it is on the board? Or what's the sandbaggery thing playing a role? Like what role is the sandbaggery playing? Because that's also a part of it. Like Sean said in another podcast, Sean Hutchins McCallum, he was talking about how, because I think he was asked the same question. He was talking about how Noah worked this kilterboard boulder for literally a year, and he finally did it, and he gave it 8B. Now I know for a fact that Noah sends multiple 8Bs in sessions. Like I look at his board account. He's popping off 8Bs right and left. So there's a lot going on in that question. Like I think they already exist. I think that it's the fact that like, people don't spend a lot of time projecting at that grade. It's too easy to move on to something that's easier and more fun on a boulder because on a board because there's thousands of climbs. But then it's also like, well, do these people know what V17 actually feels like? And if they do, are they actually going to call it that, or are they going to sandbag it? It's a huge conversation. But again, I'll just go back to what I said in the beginning. They exist. It's just that they're not spending the time to do them. And I would really like that to change. In fact, I've got a lot of video ideas to get that to change.
Yeah,
So
I want to see it. I want to see it change. Here's how much I want to see it change: is Sean. I'm not even gonna. Okay, McCollins Hutchins. Wait, I said Sean McCall.
It's a double last name.
Okay,
No,
Sean
Hutchins McCallum.
Hutchins McCallum.
It's either that or the other way around. Sorry, Sean. Jesus Christ,
dude.
He's gonna hate
Okay,
me for this.
He's Sean from here on.
Yeah.
So
TV, yeah, Board Lord
Sean reached out to me. He was like, dude, I was on a podcast. I want to come on Testpiece also. And I was like, awesome. Good on you, Sean. Love seeing you get some recognition. Maybe the impetus for you coming on is that you do V15 8C on the board and it sticks. Cause I'm like, dude, okay. I loved your example of adjustability, the idea of like crimp rig that's almost like Burden of Dreams, being able to adjust it deeper. Come on, like of course V17 is physically there because there's a almost infinite amount of combinations and infinite amount of adjustability. By the way, maybe we should start talking about 1 degree increments instead of 5 degrees.
Very true.
Just tossing that out there.
I mean, very true.
Something that I was thinking about when I saw that question come through for you, something I've thought about a lot, and this was more obvious in moonboard territory because it's a fixed angle and the hold sets, especially from the past, all kind of have a similar style, is that it seemed like we just are starting to reach this level where the board climbs become jumpy and latchy, like we were talking about, and there's kind of a limit there. And something that I kind of worry about, even on the TB2, where you do have small holds, is I'm seeing a lot of no wheeler boulders at 8B and up still kind of look like that. It's like we're still like doing that. And my question, or I don't know if my question, just my thinking out loud is like, is the hold set in all boards, on all standardized boards, are they still too big that it's requiring kind of these big gymnastic moves to get to these difficulties? Because when I see these guys like Ben Kim, Sean, like there's an element of party trick. I don't want to diminish how hard it is, and I cannot do those V13s and V14s, but it starts to stray away from kind of what we think of as really difficult hard boulders typically outside. So just bringing that up.
Yeah, no. Well, I just think that like a lot of people board climb to do those types of moves. That's just like, and then because of the moon board, it's just that's associated with the type of movement that's most common and that on boards. And so I think that a lot of people just gravitate to doing that on boards more often. But to answer your question, no. I started bringing this up a second ago. The second boulder that I had on the first Board Lords Deus, if you put that thing to 55, I think you're probably talking V16, V17 territory. And you don't cut feet on that one. You can't.
Nice.
But to answer your question, like it's a tricky, and I'll give credit to, I will say I've not climbed on the woods board very much, but it does look like it focuses more on sort of the higher end of bouldering. And I bet you could probably get something, of the upper end on that board. But boards are a tricky thing because accessibility is also a part of boards, right? So, and that's why like a varying degree, like a hold spectrum from easy to hard is it's necessary to be able to cater to a beginner climber, an intermediate climber, and an expert climber. Like you can't, like that, if you're really going to like sell a board well, like you have to be able to have it accessible to all of those people. Right. So you do have to put a certain degree of good holds on there, but you can also put a lot of, so there is a fine balance, right? But I think that what the TB2, what we've done with that as far as like integrating all of those really complex feet, I think that's really, as well as the hard, a lot of difficult holds and the angle adjustability, like that's really that's the combination of variables that you need. And I think that you absolutely can get those more realistic hard boulders out of, boards like that. It's just that people don't like setting like that. I love setting like that. Most of my boulders you'll see are just not, they're not jump boulders. That's exactly what they are, is like you kind of have to keep your feet on for the majority of them. And that, to me, that's the kind of stuff I like to set, because it just was traditionally not what you couldn't really set that kind of difficulty on other boards. So anyway, that is to say, is like, yes, they exist. Yes, they're definitely baked into at least the TB2. It's just that people just don't like setting like that for some reason. So it's just going to take people trying to take their time and set them to see them more.
It can be frustrating to get on a board and have to keep your feet on, and you're like using these holds that it's just tempting to swipe to the next one and be like, give me the jugs I can smash.
There's this high satiation thing about boards that I also think is kind of, I'm trying to come up with ideas to kind of break that. Because I mean, Sean, back to TB2 Sean, Board Lord Sean, he has done so many boulders at this point that are all classics and some of the hardest ones, that he's now going back and he's trying to repeat them at 5-degree increments. And so it's kind of one of those things where you either got to like decide you're going to start projecting things, or you have to be good enough to do everything and then like run out of things to do and start trying them on different angles. It's just that it's too easy, because it's like having a burden of dreams, right? And then you've got 20,000 of the same thing just going along in a row. And there's like, there's a V10 version, and there's so there's just too much shit around to be able to like, you can just, it's too easy to be like, I don't want to try this. It's too hard.
This is why I like chasing the classics, because they force me to do things that I struggle with. And I got to tell you, Will Anglin, Tension, co-founder, and his boulders I often really dislike them. Something about Will's style, or sorry.
I can tell you exactly what it is.
Hold on. No, wait. Let me say why I dislike. It's because they're hard for me. That's why I dislike them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying until I do them and I'm like, this is brilliant. Like, yeah. But wait, I want to hear it. Tell me why you think that I might dislike them.
Oh, well, it's the same reason I probably dislike them. It's because Will's superpowers in his legs. He's also a very technical. He'll tell you himself, like he's never been a power boulder, like he's never had the strongest fingers and all of that. But his superpower is like being able to use his legs, and the way that he uses his legs or sets boulders, it kind of requires that ability, and that's a very tough one to have. Like he'll have this far away weird foot where it requires tension to stick the next move, but if you're not occupying that space in the right way, it's impossible. Yeah. And there's like this crazy subtlety that has to happen in your lower half to make that happen. And I think we have trouble because he is also like 5'10" with like a +5, 5.5 or something. So if you're not able to even occupy that space in the same way, it's really going to be hard.
Yeah, you made me think of this V9 I was trying of his, and it kind of was traversing, and there was like a sloper, and then you had to toe hook low, and
Sleeping Giant.
It might have been that. I can't remember, but it just was like all in the legs. And okay, that does make sense why. Okay, I don't remember where I was going, so I'm just gonna go to the next question on the casting.
I think we answered the 16, 17 thing.
well, but here's okay. No, yeah, okay. Here's what it was. So a lot of the questions you got were like, what's the TB3 like, or where's
Mm,
boards going? And something that occurred to me as we were talking is that it does make me wonder if, as we get more specific, or as maybe boards can take up more spaces in gyms, or we're maybe allowed to like niche in, if rather than trying to have an adjustable board that satisfies everyone, there could be like, maybe it's a return away from adjustable boards, and it's like, this is the TB2, or a board focused on 50 degrees, and it is not made to be adjustable, and we're just like focused on this angle, which would dictate, it would change how I, well, I shouldn't say it because I've never built a board, but I would assume that it would change the decisions made around hold creation and setting.
oh yeah, totally. Well, to answer the the TB3 question, I don't think that's going to happen for a long time. And without saying too much, the TB2 hasn't even, it's not even in its final form yet. So I think there's a lot still to be squeezed out of that system. And frankly, like, of course I'm biased, but I frankly think that we've done a lot of things that are so far ahead of other options on the market that I don't really think that there's a need to like make a third one right now. Like, I think there's still a lot that we can do to really milk what this thing is. And so I'll just leave it at that. But to get to what you're saying, like, I think the future of standardized boards is more specialization. So if you think about every board on the market at this point, there's like maybe nine of them, eight or nine of them, if I'm counting
Wow,
right.
that's a lot.
Yeah, if you think about it, they're all the same fundamental thing. They are a bouldering board with a database, and they're all just a different version of that same theme. But that is a tough bowl to be in. Like, I frankly would never tell people, I would tell you, anybody, to not get into the board market. It's because what people don't realize is the board market is a real estate game. Okay. You are all of the boards are vying for this space, either in a garage or this small designated spot in a facility. Okay. And it's really tough to stand out when you've got nine of these things that are all pretty much the same thing, right? So I think that the future is more specialization. Like, I think that it's, it looks like, there's competition climbing, there's sport climbing, there's all these different things that those boards just do not do. There's replica setting, that's becoming a thing. Like, I brought that up on the last podcast, and you gave me a look. I don't know if that'll ever be a thing, but I'm just trying to think outside of the box, outside of the same fishbowl that all of these boards are currently grouped in. Because if you start making a case for serving a specific purpose and a specific like group and a specific type of climber and a specific type of thing, I think you have more of an argument to fit that into a training space than you do putting two of these same, bouldering, things that are in the same category in a bouldering or in a training space. So that's what I think it looks like. I think it's going to be like, if I were to give anyone any advice, I would be like, do not make the same damn thing that is already out. Like, unless you have a really pointed way to like stand out outside of what already exists with all of these boards, like, do something that's specialized, that is totally different. So I think the Nectar board is a thing in development. I don't know much about it, but it looks like it's doing something different. It looks like it's like a tread wall type deal, but it's like big, and I don't know much about it, but something along those lines, where like that's totally different than what anything else is. The argument could also be made, like, what if there's something made for competition climbing that goes from -5 degrees to 30 degrees, let's say, that uses bigger holds and all of that. Like, you going that direction, I think is a far better way to go. And I think that's what the future looks like, is they'll just be more specialized. So
Nice.
that's my what do you think?
Good
What do you
insight.
think, Josh?
Cue advertisement for Testpiece board, adjustable from 45 to 65, just like every other
Yeah.
board. No,
Yeah.
I definitely would discourage people from entering into the market unless they have something incredible to offer. And I do know some of the guys over at Nectar, which I think is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
That whole comp thing, where I don't know about you, but I see these training facilities and they kind of have a spray wall that is like a coordination type of spray wall where
Yeah.
and it's mirrored usually.
There's
And
macros on it.
macros, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think there's something there. Though I've heard you say that idea that it's a real estate game in the sense that I just to expand or not expand, maybe make it more concise, kind of how I took it to mean is gyms are like, okay, we need a standardized board. Okay, we need one here. Okay, we just have to. I know we don't know anything about them. We're just gonna put one over here. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here, is also a little bit trying to dispel that myth, that should
Well,
just be.
that's a part of my crusade, man, because I think that the more people know around these boards, the more space they'll be willing to
That's what I wanted to
commit
say might be
to
next.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was actually what I was thinking. Is I have the privilege of being in a town. I'm in Reno, and we have a cool gym called The Block that has 3 boards. We have a moon board, a kilter board, and a TB2, and we also have some normal bouldering, and it's kind of even split in the sense that people climb on the boards, people climb on the bouldering, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like the boards are somehow separate. It's kind of like, what do you want to climb on today? We're going to climb the slab wall. We're going to climb on the new set over here. Are we going to climb on the kilter board? Or like, my
Yeah.
buddy's on the TB2. Let's go climb over there. And it's, because each board is a touch different. And hopefully, like you're saying, maybe we see even more differences. And, maybe Sean likes to climb on just the TB2 50 days in a row. I heard someone say that about him and his youthful fingers and elbows. But
Jealous, man.
but I mean, it's nice to mix it up. And so I do wonder about quote unquote board gyms have been talked about for a long time. I don't know if that's exactly what's going to happen, but I just, I guess I would maybe hope that the real estate might open up a bit. And I think that the youth, God, it makes me sound old. Talk about Tool and the youth. The youth, I think correctly look at the boards when they walk by and say, "Oh, that'll get me strong." Now, will that get you good at climbing? Is that how you're going to be like Nale and FA Burden of Dreams? Maybe not. We could talk more about how boards can translate or don't always translate to outdoors. But my point is they see it as a way to get strong. I've heard that from, like teen kids and stuff. They're like, oh, you want to get strong? Like, that's where you go. And so I just do wonder if perhaps like when we look down the pipeline 5 to 10 years, it's like, there's a bigger real estate footprint, but I don't know. That's my hope for you guys
that's
too.
That's part of what I'm trying to do, man. I'm trying to make it, I'm trying to get through to the decision makers to understand like actually what these things are, and to stop looking at them as these grungy things they just have to have because the gym down the street has one too. They're just far more than that, in my opinion. So hopefully they'll just give more real estate over time. If we can get through to them, they'll just give more real estate to more of these boards.
I will tell you, Michael, a lot of gym owners do listen to the podcast. I do get messages from them. And I think the thing that I would actually communicate is that people love the boards. Like, and I use that term very specifically. I also love climbing in the gym. I love when there's a new set on that, roof section and my crew is on there trying all the latest boulders. And I do love that. But I don't think people really understand, or I don't know if all gym owners really understand that little board in the corner that, you see like 5 people on at a time, like having a great session. There's like a deep love there. And that should not be underestimated because That's what begets community. That's what we're doing. That's why we boulder. Like people used to mock bouldering outdoors, but we loved it. We loved sport climbing that used to get mocked. And just when you see people in love with something, take notice.
Yeah, and it's a connection. Again, it's a connection to the outside world that is, it's just not isolated in that corner, man. Like there's stuff going on in that corner, but it's a
Podcasts, stuff like
connection
that.
to, yeah, yeah.
YouTube
We
videos.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But and that also, ties in one of the questions that I saw, and I don't know how much time we have, but we'll just kind of talk. I want to just touch on this, and because someone asked like, are boards accessible? And someone also asked like something to do about like, how does someone get into, how does someone use a board to get into it if they're a beginner and all this stuff. But I reason I bring up the accessibility thing is because that's always, I think that when it comes to a lot of these decision makers, that's a big deal to them. And I think that, we have a definitely a solidified a standpoint on what a board is supposed to be in relation to the broader facility. Because I think that that's also something that it's tough for decision makers to even understand. Like, in our opinion, the board is a specific tool that is made, to do something different than the rest of the facility. And accessibility is a big part of that. But like, I guess the question that I would ask to the question of is a board accessible is like, to whom? Because we believe that if you look at a facility, right, you've got two camps of people that come in. One is the casual climber. These are the people who have not yet bought shoes. They have not yet purchased a membership. They come in every so often and get a day pass. Um, and then you've got the long-term members, like the committed climbers, right? In my mind, and at Tension's official standpoint, is the standardized board is for the committed long-term climber. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not for beginners. Like there are committed long-term beginners, and the boards should definitely be able to cater to them. But there's a lot of people in the world that think that the board has to be accessible to any old person who comes off the street who's climbing in their sneakers. And that's just not our standpoint. Like we just don't believe that. You don't spend upwards of $50,000 on this complete system that goes in the back of your gym to do the exact same thing that the rest of your facility is supposed to do. That's what the rest of the facility is supposed to do. They're supposed to cater to the people climbing in their sneakers because they want to give them a good experience to turn them into a long-term member. But the standardized board, in our opinion, is once the person decides that they are a committed climber and they want to get better at the sport, they have something for that. They have a specialized thing in the back that is made to do that. And so that's what I think as far as accessibility. Like, yes, a board should be accessible, but is it made, or at least in our opinion, should it be for the people who just walk off the street and are just like climbing in their sneakers who don't even own a chalk bag? No, not necessarily. I don't think so. That's what
Well,
the rest of the facility's for.
and potentially in the future there will be a board for specifically that, right?
Totally, totally,
And
totally.
I like that you guys know what you stand for and make something and say it's for this and this is what it's for and enjoy it as such.
That's not to, and again, that's not to say that the TB2 is inaccessible to beginner climbers. No, it is. It certainly is.
It's
Especially
maybe
if you
one of
put
the most accessible boards at a
totally.
lower angle, I should say.
Well, especially when that's a big key point is because I think that people, when they see a board, they immediately think that they have to be able to approach that board at a 40-degree angle. And that's not correct. In fact, I tell every new climber or every climber who's new to boards, put that thing at 0 degrees and climb on it until you get comfortable with the holds that you can use. Then, if you feel comfortable enough, take it down to 5, take it down to 10. Like, there's a reason the thing goes to 0. Like, it may not look like what people, the strong climbers are doing at 40 and, so on degrees, but it's certainly accessible. You just have to, use the angle to dial it back a little bit so that you can get into it,
I'm sorry.
So
I'm just laughing. You're so right. And then I walk into the gym and my buddies are on it at 40. I'm like, why you guys have on slab? We're not climbing slab today.
I know,
Kick it
and
back, dude.
it is a hot take because like I can hear people right now saying like yeah right, like imagine me going in at 5 o'clock and trying to put that thing at zero, man, they'd get so many looks, but that's what I'm just trying to say, like they're accessible, you just have to use them in the right way to ease into them. So anyway,
Okay.
thanks for letting me tangent on that.
Oh no, it's good. I mean, really, what it makes me want to go and talk about that, I think we should save for another time, is more about utilizing boards to help with outdoor climbing. That was a lot of the questions, and
Yeah.
Maybe that is when
Yeah,
we make it more of a training board instead of a standardized board. But I'm just kind of joking there for what we said earlier. Yeah, I before we go on to the last question, I'll just say that I mean, Michael, you work at Tension. Tension does sponsor the podcast sometimes. I'm gonna make sure.
Love you, dude.
I'm gonna make sure it doesn't sponsor this one. I just gotta put it out there. But I will say that I I know you love boards. I love all boards. Spray walls. I have a moon board in my garage. I think you can see me on my ranking on the TB2. I'm always trying to climb the ranks, and I also have had tons of fun smash around on the kilter board at the block. I love them all. And my hunch is I would love the woods board and the decoy board. I've gotten a lot of like messages from like my buddies back east. They're like, dude, don't sleep on the decoy board. I'm like, I'm not. I just I love them all. I love the culture. And I was joking that there's board lords, and then I'm part of the board hordes, the masses of people that just are out there. And so I just wanted to call that out as just, I think we both love this whole community. And, if you saw someone come out with a new niche, I think you would, give them a big thumbs up to it. Knowing the Tension crew, man. You guys are not super negative here. Just supporting.
Yeah. We don't, again, like it's not, there is, I hate using superlatives when it comes to these, like the best and all this stuff. Like the best for what? Like, we've all got different aims and whatever that we want to get out of these things. And they're all their own unique, climbing area. And that's how I like to look at them.
The best one is the one that's in front of you with your crew and you're having a blast on. Really.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's wrap. I know this was super focused on boards, but I do typically ask how do you go from good to great? Did you prepare something, Michael? Should we go there?
Yeah, sure. What did I say earlier? That's already one you got.
I don't know, man. I black out every past episode is a past episode. We're here right now. And answers can change. So Michael, you gotta let me ask it all formally and nice. So, Michael, how do you go from good to great?
Well, man, I don't know what kind of answer you're looking for, but I wanted to try to take a different approach. Now, I obviously don't know what everybody says.
Go for it.
But I think in my mind, it's a little less to do with the physical aspects of what you're doing in climbing and more to do with the mental. That's something that I am constantly working on myself. But I think good to great is building a bit of mental resilience, specifically during your lows. So, and I think that's a constant thing to practice as you progress, right? Like, I think, again, this is something I'm constantly working on myself. I think for pretty much everybody listening to this podcast, like climbing is an obsession for most of us. And it can be tough to not tie your self-worth into that. Like outside of the sport, I think that we have this more times than we'd like to admit, we tie ourselves worth into how our performance is at any given time. So I think like when you're in your lulls, I think it's tough to give yourself some grace and not give yourself a hard time. And, I have noticed that as you progress, climbing at times is like less fun and more serious. And it gets difficult not to be down on yourself all the time when you think you should be able to do something, but you can't. So I think that it's important from time to time to return back to a place of innocence with the sport and remember why it brings you joy. And frankly, I think if you're not making a living climbing, then stop giving yourself such a hard time when you're not doing the best that you can do, you know? I think we're all fortunate, and we forget this at times. We're all fortunate to be able to travel to some of these areas or have a gym membership to, you know, meet up with the communities that we found through this sport. Like, we are all fortunate to be able to do these things. So I would just say that, just back to it, like, good to great is, to me, arriving at a point when you can see clearly through the lulls and learning to give yourself a break when you aren't performing at your best. So there you go.
Good one. God, it's hard to deal with lows and injuries, and it's something that I've said on here because I've been injured quite often. Uh, Maybe not more than my fair share. It just is what it is. I think everyone gets injured. If you haven't, I gotta tell you, you will. Try not to, though. And my only kind of like nuance to that I would share is that I think it's unreasonable to think that you won't experience lows, or you won't have, you know, times where your mentality is negative, when you think, oh, why can't I do this? And what I think I've gotten better at is shortening how long I let my mind go to the negative places. Like, I don't know if you can ever stop it, but that maybe the best thing you could do would be like, if it's just a flicker and you go, hey, knock that off.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a constant practice. Like, but I think it's just really important to practice it more and more and more as you do progress, because it just can put you in a really negative place, and you can be down on yourself for things you can't control. And it's just, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't tie that into who you are and like all of that shit. Again, I do it. I had a conversation with my wife the other day, and I was like, you know, having trouble really not, you know, putting my self-worth into like this fucking sport. But again, I'm not making money doing this sport. I am ingrained in the community in a different way, and I'm doing different impactful things, which, you know, I have to remind myself like that, you know. But again, I think we all go through it, and it's just something that we're all going to have to continue to practice. But again, I think good to great is being able to, like, when you do get to those lulls, you can be able to like really talk to yourself and dig yourself out of feeling so negative and so down on yourself. So, yeah.
Okay, that was a very happy note to end on.
Yeah, there we go. That's what we want.
Well, Michael,
that make you cry?
I was wiping but it was only for a moment. See, I got out of it really quick.
So you got out of it. Yeah, that's good.
Well, that was a blast. I have a hunch that everyone listening is going to want us to do even more board content, because I know my listeners love boards as much as we do. But just send out those messages, drop those comments to remind us that, hey, we want more board content. And just thanks for all those questions that you sent to Michael when he did that Instagram poll. And I'm sure we'll do it again. But in the meantime, tell us that you want us to do it again, and we will.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome.
That was a blast. Till next time, man.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/Testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.